Welcome to the Improviding Life podcast, where we explore how life can be more livable. This is Lori Crawford, your host. So, we are starting a very long time in the making series about how human design helps me human and might just help you human as well. So, the first episode, we are going to be diving into this idea of human design as a tool for helping us as sense makers. And what I mean by that is the most overarching way that the human design system, which I'll share about in a moment, helps me human is by helping me sense make how I experience the past and offer ways that I can be present with myself right now and how I can best look forward and dream forward towards the future with both myself in mind and the collective in mind. So, what is human design? Human design is a system of ancient cosmologies and modalities like the chakra system, astrology, the Kabbalah tree of life, and the I Ching. And all of these systems were downloaded through a arguably problematic white dude who went by the name of Ra Uru, who downloaded a way that all of those cosmologies blend together to provide an energetic blueprint. And another way to think of it, and how I see it, is we're often told or heard this idea of, oh, God, creator, source made us all individual and special. And I look at human design as, if that is true, if we're all uniquely made, then this is one of the tools that can show us how we were uniquely made, what energy and our existence, and how we could experience the world before life and told us otherwise, right? Like how that all is possible. So with that very brief, sort of like we're going to go through human design was like onions, right? We're going to peel some layers. So that broadest layers is stating that it ends, you put in your birth information, so time, date, location, and it ends up providing you a chart. And this chart will have 9 chakra systems, or centers rather, that you will see that are different shapes, and they can either be colored in, which would be defined, or uncolored, which could be undefined or open. And how all of this comes to be is based on 64 gates that are energy flavors or types that are spread throughout those 9 centers. So depending on which gates you have activated, meaning that they are energies that you have consistent access to because they're in your energetic blueprint, then that combination and whether they link to the sort of corresponding energy centers around them determines whether a center is defined or undefined. And in the case where a center is open, there will be none of the gates present in that center will be activated. And so you can have any combination of those centers, defined, undefined, open, and that combination then determines what your aura type is, which would be a manifestor, projector, reflector would have, and the reflectors would have 0 active or defined centers. They would have a chart that looks completely white in terms of the centers, with some gates activated, but there would not be connecting or linking to any other center. So their chart would look white. And then you have generators and manifesting generators. And so while this particular episode is not going into more of the how to read your chart, if anyone has those questions, feel free to reach out and let me know. I can send some resources your way, or if you want a reading, I also provide human design readings and week-long integration guidance services. So all that to say that once someone has this chart, not only does it show then where you have consistent access to in each of those centers, those energy centers have certain themes or awarenesses or pulses that help you navigate through life, but also those are your superpowers or your skills. Those are where you have you're coming into this world with a way of knowing something about through that energetic lens. And then where you are open or undefined in those white centers, that would be where you're here to gain wisdom, where you're, and then also that means that in those sort of thematic categories related to those energy centers, that is where you're going to feel that life is lifing the most, because you're taking in a larger sort of dose or volume of energy in those spaces. And so with that very, I would say not super limited, but with that surface level, description of human design, I then want to then speak just from my experience of how then human design helps me in that sense-making experience of making sense of the past, realizing ways I can be present with myself and others now, and then being able to dream beyond systems of oppression into the future, and really revisit this idea of who am I being, and how does that gel or not gel with who I am. So when I look at how I experienced the past, so I was made aware of human design in 2019, so it's now 2024, so it has been 5 going on 6 years, and since that awareness of human design, I've been able to, and still have practices of looking at childhood trauma that stemmed into adult trauma, right? So looking at what weighs heaviest on me from my lived experience, and having this understanding of human design actually equips me to validate my experience to myself, to yes and it, by way of saying, yes, this happened, and here's how the weight of it is impacting me, or here's how I was more, let's say, receptive to the weight of this based off of what I have defined and undefined. So I will share based off of my own chart. So I'm what's called a mental projector. It's a subtype of projector. And so I have my head and ajna, which are the top 2 centers on a human design body graph, defined. Everything else, so the other 7 centers from the throat down, I have open or undefined. So I have 4 centers that are undefined, meaning there are some gates active. And I have 3 centers completely open, which means that I don't have any energy centers or any gates activated within those energy centers. And so in those 3 particular centers that are fully open, imagine those types of centers, anything fully open, being the sort of strongest and loudest Bluetooth speaker possible, where it's really amplifying the energy that happens. So then when I am in this practice of sense making of the past and how the past affected me then and continues to impact me now, what I've been able to do with my human design practice, and human design really as one of the tools that I have access to, that I'm able to say, oh, okay, one of my fully open centers is my spleen. That's the center for survival and health. I can see how so much childhood trauma has impacted my ability to feel safe, has impacted my relationship with my body and this idea of wellness and health, and is that something that's even accessible to me? I also have a fully open emotional solar plexus, so I'm also able to say, oh, the fact that my parents and the people around me as my caretakers in life had defined emotion centers, but did not know that and did not have the tools or access to having healthy and emotionally literate, like a high literacy with their emotions, that I was feeling amplifying all of that dysfunction in our family. And the weight of it and why it impacted me so much, I can start to humanize that to myself and say, oh, I understand that, because having that center fully open made the loudness of the dysfunction so volatile within my system. And now when I pair together and look at my open solar plexus with my open spleen, I can say, oh, I can then see how having this excess of turbulent emotional energy around me all the time then impacted and continues to impact my ability to feel safe, to understand when things are actually a matter of life and death and when they might feel like that to my nervous system. And then when we add in my third fully open center, for example, I'm able to see that, oh, that's my heart, my ego center, or also known as, your heart, ego, your will center. That having that fully open also then means that I could amplify and feel anyone's lack of self-worth. So that's really a question that comes through now as an adult of what even is self-worth. And I'm able to see through so much of my life how my identity, my sort of conviction in life has been to take on the role and be asked and expected to take on the role of the fixer, of keeping the family afloat, even though I was the youngest child, because it could feel like there wasn't this sense of belonging in the family unit if I was not doing all of that fixing and protecting of others. So when I just looking at those, my three fully open centers, I'm continually revisiting those as places where, yes, I am learning and can have such a wealth of wisdom that I get through life because I now know how to go back and have this reflective practice. And also that those spots just need more salve, and some love and attention throughout my life, because they are the parts of me that feel the most, that can detect when things are off the easiest, and also that for much of life it hasn't felt safe to listen to that awareness and to share out, oh, this is feeling off with those people around me. With any person around me, right? It's a very vulnerable thing in my nervous system as well, at least, to be able to share out what is coming up. And then when you look at the projector aura itself, anyone who's a projector, regardless of subtype, we are meant to wait for energetic or invitations to share what we know and our awareness of it, because our energy is so aware of of others. Like our energy goes inside of the other's energy. So that way it's almost like we do diagnostics, right? And how invasive is it for us to share our diagnostic discoveries, right, if we're not asked to, right? So there is a valid reason why just sharing what we know, at random is not ideal. And also, so few people have awareness or knowledge of any of this, so it's very natural for dysregulation and dysfunction amidst all of the other systems that we're navigating in the world. So that was how it's helped me sense making in the past based off of some of the challenges I have. But when I look at the two centers that I have defined, which again are my head and ajna, and the next episode I'm going to break down into this more about my definition. But for now, I'll share that it also is something where I acknowledge, and when I'm making sense of the past, that the moments when I was being the most like me, which is someone who is very aware, whose brain just sees all these different configurations. It's like a kaleidoscope. I see how things link up that other people may not see. My ability to see and sense make, and even laughing that this is the title or the concept of the first episode is sense making, right? That is something that, especially as a child, was so frowned upon by caregivers and those around me, because it always gets sort of washed over and labeled as being a know-it-all. That I'm in this continual sort of reclamation experience of being okay that I have those are my power centers, that those are that is the energy I have consistent access to, and that just means that I'm going to experience life a different way. And mental projectors are less than 1% of the population. So it's just not common to have an energetic experience than in a human sort of meat suit experience on Earth. So does that give me more room and grace to acknowledge, yes, people in my life may have caused harm, and also they weren't equipped or aware of tools to know that they were. And also it's that balance of loving accountability, of my mentor Felicia Savage Friedman says being critical lovers. And so through this sense-making process, sort of keeping the compass on the value of honoring the humanity of others and myself. And so then when we're shifting sort of part 2 of this episode of ways that human design has equipped me to be present with now, it, especially now as a parent with a toddler who has emotional definition. So her solar plexus is one of her centers defined, and I, again, have it fully open, so I'm not Bluetooth amplifying it. More and more, now that we're in toddlerhood, trying to realize before I get to the point of energetic and emotional overwhelm that I can feel her emotions and reactions to things, which are totally valid and absolutely accurate for her to be having. I can feel the intensity of them, and I'm actually amplifying them. So noticing that, now there are times where when she's feeling a larger emotional reaction, that she will want to have some physical distance. And she'll be making eye contact still, and so I reassure her that I'm there, but I can physically feel and notice now that if I start to walk up to her and physically move my body closer to her without making that eye contact first, getting the energetic invitation to increase my proximity to her, that it ramps up, it's like restarts that emotional wave and further dysregulates her. And also then, again, this is me perceiving and perhaps projecting out, but seeing that it not only restarts the intensity of that way for her, but also since toddlers are learning what independence is and seeking more independence, that it can also feel like a violation to that. So, overall, being present as a parent right now, in particular, it's like human design is giving me the ability to remind myself that there's so many developmental milestones and changes and seasons in parenthood that, yes, I could have read about, but wouldn't have the lived experience of navigating until now. And that as things start shifting and she's having different needs and I'm learning how to navigate those with her, while also asking myself, can I be on my own list of priorities, and actually be taking care of myself, that human design gives me that ability. Yes, that was just one example with her emotional center, but also knowing that because I have that head and ashna defined, there's never a moment in my life, sleeping and dreaming included, where my mind is not doing something. And so being present for me can look like a practice of realizing and remembering that I have a body, that I have a spirit, right? I'm not just the mind. And in moments where it's, I have seasons and cycles where I can only access being with my mind and acknowledging that that is part of my experience and it doesn't need to be bad. But the more that I'm aware of when that starts to get too much for me, how great it is to have something like human design as a reminder of, not only do I have a body, but I have this deeper realization available to me of how I can start to re-relate with my body. So what that might look like for me, again, going back to having a fully open spleen, I can ask myself, am I actually feeling safe and regulated right now? Are the things piling up on my plate so destabilizing that I don't see a way to climb this mountain with all of the tasks and roles I'm managing? And in cases and days where that's a valid reflection that I'm having, then I'm able to ask myself something like, what feels like the most nutritive way to spend my 5 seconds, that I might get in between roles or tasks. That might be, rubbing my forehead to release some tension, jumping in a quick shower if I'm able to. Showers are really very, very helpful for me as a mental projector to literally alleviate and cleanse and sort of re-stimulate my head to have a different experience than all of the things. There's just something I cannot adequately put to words about the feeling of having a clean scalp. And this is someone with seborrheic dermatitis, right? So my scalp has been issues with me my whole life. But there's something about sort of resetting the sensory part of my scalp and washing it where my hair suddenly, the weight of it is different. That's not dragging me down. I feel so much more perceptive to being human and not feeling like a robot when I have a freshly washed scalp. And acknowledging that then is a way where, if I have to be really present for something like facilitating a session, more time-sensitive work with clients, a sort of larger ask than my day-to-day functioning, accessing that shower before that is so rejuvenating and humanizing to me, because I'm able to say, oh, here's how I've been adulting on autopilot, and here's how I'd rather relate to reality right now. Another thing that's coming up when I think about how human design equips me to be present with the now, it is, now that because of the way that media and social media is available, we're at this point in human experience where we have greater access to what's happening in the world than we ever have before, and also so often a disconnect between the actual other humans that are then using said media with us. So when navigating moments like now, when there are several genocides happening, and knowing that with my commitment to not prioritizing my own sort of self-appeasing comfort and not looking and acting like nothing's happening, right? My commitment to of staying involved and aware of what is happening in many parts of the world, that part of taking care of myself has to become noticing how long have I been scrolling and looking at media showing what's happening in genocide and recirculating that information and trying to bring awareness to it. How long have I been doing that without a break? How is that feeling in my body? Am I breathing? Am I clenching my jaw? How many times have I cried in the past hour? Looking at that other way of how can I notice how I'm being present, and can I remind myself that to actually sustain collective impact work, it's about knowing it's a lifetime commitment. It's not looking for this really fast, immediate sort of relief of tension and of turmoil. So in that instant, in that situation, human design has recently, the past 6 months or so, been a way that I'm able to say, okay, I can now feel my thoughts spinning towards certain thoughts that are not actually leaving room for possibility that life can be more livable for anyone, and then branching into how can it be livable for all. I'm able to notice when my body is physically not doing well. So right now I'm having several major issues with major joint systems and navigating the possibility that I have autoimmune situations happening. And so how does it look to be present with myself amidst the pain and the changes in mobility and the impact of my quality of life, while also upholding and living to the values that I've decided I'm living life to? And then this feels like now segueing into this third part of the episode of really looking at how can human design support me and looking forward, future oriented, of life being more livable for all, having this practice of dreaming beyond systems of oppression. What does the world look like if indigenous practices and wisdoms were given the proper and adequate support and merit that they've always deserved but have not been allowed to have by white supremacy culture and colonialism and imperialism? And so one of the consistent for me over the past few months ways that human design comes up when I'm thinking about the future, again, is going back to this idea of having that open heart center and realizing in myself when I'm feeling really reactive or cold towards a stranger for something that, they've done that I've experienced. If I am feeling like I don't have the potential to carry their heart beam love out into the world, that to me is such a great indicator and invitation for me to say, I know and feel that I'm someone with the ability to love. that there's more for me to sit with and to unpack and to rearrange for myself. Because for me, in my, path forward towards collaboratively building a more humane future, it has to come from a place of love for me. And there might be another value or resonance that happens for other people. But for me, it's like if I cannot access that Care Bear Heartbeam feeling, that is that invitation for me to acknowledge how the weight of the world and the systems around me are giving me ample opportunities to dehumanize myself and others. And now seeing too that we have been chatting for 25 minutes, checking in with this as well is like, there can be this, I can have this a sense of urgency to want to share everything all at once, because it can feel like, as a mental projector, with the head and ocean defined, it can feel like, oh wait, here's my moment, like I'm feeling this energy, my throat's actually sharing out, like, that there can be this fear that the moment won't happen again. But I'm also now feeling a space to choose and trust and believe that as I'm recording future episodes for this series, that what needs to be shared will be shared. And so in that note, I'm going to pause here and give a slight spoiler, or no, teaser, a little gem to look forward to, that I've already interviewed one really phenomenal human design practitioner, and their episode will be dropping very soon. And I just want to leave that little get excited note. Our conversation was so rich and layered and nuanced and hopeful, and really it felt like a practice of being that critical lover. And so throughout this series, as I'm sharing how human design helps me human, and bringing in a few other practitioners to really see how they have their own resonance with human design and how they support people, I am hoping that this is a invitation for anyone who already knows of human design to ask themselves, how do I really want to relate with this information beyond the perhaps jargony information that I see around me, or perhaps how I've told that this information has to matter to me, what actually is coming up for me. And then for anyone who is newer to human design, who is curious or interested in learning more, that you're feeling empowered and equipped to start this exploration with your humanity right at the forefront, right? And that how can you leverage your lived experience through this, and it be a practice of both validating yourself and also seeing how being in right relationship with yourself and others adds to your quality of life in a way, and how can human design as a tool be an avenue for us to be critical lovers towards ourselves and in those we're in relationship with. So with that being said, as always, have a razzle-dazzle day. And if that's not accessible, you can put an F on front and have a frazzle-dazzle day.